Hello, Anytime here. Today, I will show you the recap of a 2006 anime titled The Girl Who Leapt Through Time. Spoiler alert, watch out and take care. The movie begins with Makoto. She's a 17-year-old student who enjoys coming to school late. That night, she dreams of playing a handball game with her nerd friend, Kosuke, and eventually wakes up late. As she wakes, she hurriedly prepares for school and attempts to leave home. However, her mother gives her a package to drop off with her aunt, Kazuko, who works at the Tokyo National Museum. She leaves home hurriedly and rides to school. As she rides to school, she meets her friend, Chiaki, a latecomer like her. They get to the class late, but they're lucky the teacher isn't in class. Makoto comments about her luck before the teacher enters the class with a pop quiz. According to Makoto, she isn't a bad student because she has good guessing spirit, so she's an average student. However, this time around, she couldn't guess the questions, so she couldn't write anything in the examination. After the class, they leave for their food practical. Before she starts cooking, she tells herself she's a very careful person and that she cooks carefully too. Again, she burns the whole laboratory due to a cooking accident. She leaves the laboratory with her friend, who's concerned about her. She tells her friend that she never gets the worst injuries. Unfortunately, not this time again, as a colleague playing on the field falls right on her head. Eventually, Makoto gets to class and arranges the books with her colleague. She takes some textbooks upstairs. However, as she enters, she sees the inscription, "Time waits for no one," on the blackboard. She also finds a door that leads to the laboratory. She enters the lab, walks around, and as she attempts to leave, she feels someone else is in the lab. She slips and falls on a marble that takes her into another realm entirely. She wakes up and takes off for school with Kosuke and Chiaki. After they play handball on the field, they withdraw as she endeavors to visit the historical center. She rides towards the hallway roughly. As she's almost to cross the railroad, the traffic light changes to red, and the street closes against her. She falls from her bike, and the oncoming train is around to hit her. She wakes by the roadside, seeing a grown-up angry at her. She figures she isn't dead, and the train doesn't hit her. She had gone back to when she was riding the railroad. She summons her final metal and goes to the gallery to meet her aunt, Kazuko. She tells Kazuko all that has happened and confirms if she's still alive. She clarifies to Kazuko that she was nearly murdered a few minutes back. Kazuko tells her that time doesn't go back. Rather, she's the one that jumped back in time. Makoto leaves the exhibition hall that day and tries to practice jumping through time. Her first attempt to jump didn't make any effect. She goes to a nearby mountain where she attempts jumping again. She tries to leave once more, and this time, she's successful. She meets herself at home on July 12. She goes to her pudding in the fridge and drinks it before her sister drinks it. She realizes that she can indeed time jump. She goes to July 13, that blessed day, and she corrects all her day's mistakes. That morning, as she wakes late, she time jumps to an earlier time and gets to school early for the first time. As the teacher conducts the pop test, she rapidly understands the question as she lived the day before. During the practical food class, she trades her table with Kosuke, and Kosuke makes a cooking mistake instead of her. After the class, as she walks toward the field, she dodges the boy that jumped on her that day. She returns home happy and sees the cooked food isn't what she wants to eat. She jumps to the day they are her favorite food, and she swallows it again. She goes to her aunt, Kazuko, and appreciates Kazuko for her guidance. She tells Kazuko that now she can live her life as she wants, and also earn and spend money the way she wants. The next day at school, she had a great day. After school, some set of girls stop Kosuke on their way to the field. As they meet later, he tells them the girl asked him to go out with her, and they talk about relationships. On her way home, she takes Chiaki's bike. On their way, Chiaki asks her out. She feels awkward and leaps back. In the second trial, she tries to prevent Chiaki from discussing a relationship. Still, Chiaki asks her again, and she leaps again. And this time around, she refuses to follow Chiaki's bike. She meets Kosuke that evening, who tells her there's no way she can take away the request. And that turns out to be accurate as she feels awkward with Chiaki the next day at school. She refuses to attend their baseball training that evening, and Chiaki wonders what happened. She continues to use her skills for petty situations. One day, while she was having her bath, she sees a number on her head, which assumes to be 90. Some days after, she leads the class in the mathematical quiz again. The teacher calls for her, and on her way back, she sees the number on her hand has reduced. While she's caught up in the dilemma of finding out what the number means, she meets the group of friends that stopped Kosuke earlier. Two of the girls inform her that their friend Kaho is in love with Kosuke, and they need to know if Kosuke and Makoto are dating. Makoto tells them she isn't dating Kosuke, and she asks Kaho why she's so interested in dating Kosuke. Kaho explains that her grandmother told her about a young boy who assisted her when she was stranded, and when she resumed school, she found out the young boy was Kosuke. Makoto feels like helping the situation, so she time jumps to the day Kaho asks Kosuke. Her approach to the problem is awkward, and it scares everyone out, so she time jumps again. For the second time, her approach doesn't work. She decides to take a more natural approach, so she time jumps to the day a colleague fell on her way to the field. She makes Kosuke fall on Kaho and watches them as they apologize to each other. She sees the number on her hand has reduced, and she sees it's now 1. She goes into the laboratory and looks for the man she met that day. While she's there, she receives a text from Kosuke telling her that he's now dating Kaho and he wants to borrow her bicycle to drive Kaho home. Kosuke remembers her bike is faulty. She runs out of the lab to meet them. Meanwhile, Kosuke and Kaho take the bicycle and proceed on their journey. She tries to call them, but Kosuke doesn't pick up. She rightly assumes they will pass in front of the train station and they will have an accident just like she did on that day. So she runs to the train station. As the train passes, she sees her friend isn't there and she sighs in relief. Just as she's about to leave, she receives a call from Chiaki, who asks her if she had been time leaping. She wonders how he knew about the time jumping, and she leaps through time to avoid that question. As she does, she notices the number on her hand drops to 0, and understands the number represents the number of times she has left to leap. She feels it has been rightly used. Suddenly, she sees Kosuke coming with Kaho on the bike. She tries to call them as they ride towards the railway, and she cries. Suddenly, everywhere freezes. She's alive with only Chiaki, and she wonders how Chiaki can freeze time. Chiaki tells her he came from the future, and his mission for coming was to look at the artwork in the museum. He tells her that he misplaced his marble, and he was always scared the marble would fall into the wrong hands. However, by the time he found the marble, it had been used up, and he was only left with 1 leap, which he should have used to go back, but he used it to save Kosuke and Kaho. She realizes she's in love with him and begs him to stay, but he tells her he can't wait. He says it's against the rule for a future person to allow a past human to know about time leaping, so he has to serve his punishment. He vanishes, and the world continues. He isn't at school the next day. Kosuke wonders why Chiaki isn't at school, and comments that Makoto should know the reason, since Makoto was Chiaki's crush. Throughout the day, Makoto skips all her meals and listens to Kazuko's past love experience. She returns home and skips dinner too. In her room, she sees her time leap opportunity remain 1. She runs out of the house and figures Chiaki has left back in time, which gains her the last leap. She leaps back to where it originally started in the laboratory. She takes the marble and leaves for the field with Kosuke. On their way, they meet Kaho and her friends. She asks Kosuke to invite Kaho into the baseball group, and as Kosuke does that, she runs to meet Chiaki and gives him the marble. She checks his hands and sees he has 1 leap left. She tells him he was the one that told her about it in the future, and they both spend their final day together on the mountain. Before he leaves, she tells him she will protect the artwork he needs to see and ensure it remains in the future. He embraces her, and they leave each other in tears. At the movie's end, Makoto and Kosuke play baseball on the field. Kaho and her friends have also joined the baseball clique. Kosuke feels Makoto should know Chiaki's whereabouts. She tells him Chiaki has gone abroad to study. She realizes Kosuke doubts her reply, so she says anyone can make such a decision too. She comments she has decided about her future too, but she refuses to tell him what she has selected. Thank you for watching the recap. Kindly subscribe to our channel to get notified when we post the next recap. See you next time.